It's important to say that the opinions shared in this episode are just that, and they're ours alone. I urge each and every one of you to do your own homework before making any decisions. This is Manu Intiraymi, an actor and producer known for his role as the former Borg member Icheb on the final 2 seasons of Star Trek Voyager. In 2017, Manu got on Twitter to defend actor Kevin Spacey, whom he had had some positive interactions with, against Spacey's first accuser, Star Trek Discovery actor Anthony Rapp. Manu shared some unpopular opinions without really knowing the full extent of Spacey's accusations, and Star Trek fans were not happy. As Manu began to dig deeper to uncover more details about the many allegations against Kevin Spacey, he quickly changed his tune and apologized publicly to Anthony. Anthony amazingly accepted Manu's apology publicly, but the damage was already done. Hundreds of fans ignored the ideals of Star Trek and forgiveness and began reaching out to all the conventions and production companies associated with Manu to have him banned. The petitions worked, and Manu faced some immensely dark days. And then it seemingly went as far as the producers of Star Trek Picard hiring a new actor to portray Manu's character Icheb, and spoiler alert, brutally torturing and then casually killing him off in an episode. We talk all about this, the future of Star Trek, the dark days of Manu's cancellation, and his climb to fight back, to apologize and clear his name, one fan at a time. I'm Andy Signor, and this is Hugging the Cactus. To ensure you never miss a story, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and hit that notification bell to all alerts. It's the only way to ensure that YouTube will keep us in your feed. I'm here with Manu. Manu, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So, is it safe to say that most fans recognize you from Star Trek Voyager?
Is it safe to say that?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
That's the biggest thing. That's my favorite thing you've done, but I imagine that's what fans
listening. Yeah, I think that's a safe thing to say. Yeah.
That's how I knew of you from Icheb on Voyager. You played a Borg with 7 of 9.
Yeah.
And
a character named Icheb. Yeah. Some people recognize me from One Tree Hill because that's a completely different fan base. There's not a lot of crossover between the Star Trek fans and the One Tree Hill fans. But mostly Star Trek is the role that I'm most known for. But I've done a ton of other things.
And Star Trek has a very big community. You had done conventions and things, and the reason I'm just bringing all that up because this is going to be part of the story that I want to make sure people understand. But you had done the Trek conventions and stuff. Does One Tree Hill have conventions, actually? Did they?
They do, actually, yeah. Just recently, over the last maybe 10 years, they've gotten bigger and more common, the One Tree Hill cons. But I'm from back in the day. I did Star Trek it's not 20 years ago already, but it is. I was 20 when I got the part. I'm 42 now. So I was like doing conventions back in the day before Comic-Con, when it was just Star Trek conventions. Before like the Comic-Con sort of merged with Star Trek and it became, most conventions now are a conglomerate of all the sci-fi and supernatural type television and film and Marvel movies. But, I was there in the beginning.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. It's true. Now it's all morphed into just more credits you have, the better. Then you get the higher your prices are to show up and everything. But back in the day, it was just Trek for a lot of things. So that you had to have that exclusive card. But they've opened up the cards, it seems, to a lot of other. But that's good. I didn't watch One Tree Hill, can you give the fans sort of where did you come from? How did you get into acting? Just a little bit of how that started for you.
Yeah, I knew I wanted to be an actor since I was 4 years old. I saw a production of Peter Pan, and I saw the actors flying around on stage, and I basically told my hippie parents that were moving around all the time around America and around Europe. I just pounded into their heads from 4 years old on, take me to Hollywood, take me to Hollywood. And when I was 17, I was doing a play called Marvin's Room. And there was a manager that happened to be in the audience, and this was in Northern California. And the manager came up to me and said, "Hey, what are you doing after high school?" I said, "I'm going to go study acting, and I'm going to, try to be a professional actor." And the manager said, "Well, if you move to Los Angeles, I'll represent you. I'll get you an agent." And so I immediately did. And within 2 years, I found myself on Star Trek Voyager. A few things happened in those 2 years to, get me to that place, but it was pretty quick. and very lucky break that young.
And is that really as lucky of a break as sort of, I mean, that changes everything, right? When you get sort of a main role on a show like that?
Absolutely. I don't remember what I got first, but I got cast in a movie with James Franco and Aaron Paul and Shane West and Colin Hanks and a bunch of the stars of my era, called Whatever It Takes. And that put me sort of on the insider LA map, because it was the end of teensploitation films, if you remember. That was a big thing in the 90s. And that probably led to me getting the test for Star Trek Voyager. But then booking Star Trek Voyager, suddenly I was auditioning for the Anakins and the Frodos of the time, and have been able to piece together a working actor's career ever since.
Yeah, it's awesome. So
certainly lucky to get on a show, a franchise that big.
Yeah, and when you get a role like that for that community, it lasts forever, right? So it's like you can be a working actor forever, but not secure a show like that that's just in that kind of fandom that goes to conventions. But the fact that you've had a few of those now, that's great. So congrats.
For me, the reason Star Trek has that sort of never fading, always gonna be around and be remembered sort of thing, is Gene created, the creator, Gene Roddenberry, really made an emphasis on sci-fi being a way in which we can tell morality tales and talk about the issues of the day through the filter of science fiction. And I felt like almost every episode of Star Trek I did had a great message. And the people that follow Star Trek vehemently, if that's the right word, they believe in that message of the betterment of mankind, and that someday we're going to get our ethics together. And I believed in that, and still do, in the Star Trek message. And I think that's why being a part of that franchise, keeps you around.
Well said, and that is foreshadowing for the future of our conversation, because that's not the world of Star Trek these days, and we're going to get into that because I'm frustrated with how that's not. You said it right. That Star Trek was about optimism, like positivity of a world without poverty and class and bigotry, and the new Star Trek series aren't doing that. And then, as we get to this sort of, I'm trying to get to a timeline of setting up the tone of what happened to you. I don't feel like the show treated you the way that Star Trek should treat you, or anybody for that matter. So let's get to that. I mean, so what happened in your story, which I talked about a bit in the beginning, and that montage, what happened to you was, you were doing well, working actor, and you were doing your own thing. And I want to get to this main point, because that's really what I would talk about. This show is about sort of when we have that moment of something really happens that changes our world. You went on Twitter. And talked about tweeted about actor Kevin Spacey. Just to get through the timeline of sort of when things happened. You went out and tweeted in defense of Kevin Spacey at the beginning. But can you clarify sort of what that first tweet storm you did about Kevin, when sort of the accusations came about him with a fellow Star Trek actor but different show, Anthony Rapp? Can you tell us sort of what happened in your words?
Sure. I don't know if this was 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, something like that, when Kevin was first, when Anthony Rapp first broke the news about Kevin Spacey coming onto him in his house. And a friend of mine, I hadn't even looked at Twitter or Facebook or the news or anything. A friend of mine let me know about the allegations that Kevin Spacey had raped or tried to rape Anthony Rapp. And I had moved, the long story is, when I was 17, I moved to LA, and one of the first celebrities I met was Kevin Spacey and Danny DeVito, and they gave me a Cuban cigar, and Kevin Spacey hung out with me and chatted for 10 minutes on the lot, and just was very nice to me. So when I heard through the grapevine that this had happened, I came out really brutally in my defense of Kevin Spacey. Like, fuck, can I cuss on this show?
Whatever you want.
Yeah. So I was like, fuck that. He came on to the kid. The kid was 16. He didn't rape him. He stopped. it's not as big a deal as people are making it out to be. And I basically called Anthony Rapp I think I called him a pussy, and told him to like man up. And then within hours, at least a day or two, I looked into the matter more, and I saw that more allegations had happened. And, 3 years down the road, I think Kevin Spacey is probably one of the most despicable people on the planet. He was on Epstein's plane a few times to that island. And I think he probably is the disgusting individual that the world seems to think he is. I'm on that board. I'm on that plane now. And so pretty quickly, I after looking into all the allegations, I apologized to Anthony Rapp and tried to take my tweets back because they were coming from a place of emotional response and ignorance. And I apologized, and he was kind enough to actually live the Star Trek ethic and was very gracious in his acceptance of my apology, and publicly on Twitter said, "Hey, no problem, man. People have emotional responses. You're Star Trek family to me." And I thought that was so cool of him. But the unfortunate thing about the social media universe is you can say some dumb shit on Twitter, and the response was overwhelming. I think I lost like 10 out of 100 of my fans instantly hated me. Petitions were made to Star Trek conventions and sent to all the promoters of all the different conventions saying, "We, the Star Trek fan base, don't want Manu Intiraymi invited to conventions anymore because as a pedophilia defender, he might be a pedophilia, whatever they called, a pedo himself, and thus a dangerous individual that we wouldn't want around our kids," and etc. And there was a big group that immediately made that jump from not just saying dumb things, but possibly doing extremely evil things. And I just got beat up, for years and blocked from going to the conventions that I love to go to. And I think 90% of the Star Trek fan base forgave me. And still to this day, when people find out about the whole story, they tend to forgive and tend to apologize for judging me as harshly as I was judged. And that's the story, basically. It's to this day, I still fan by fan by fan, when I get hate mail on my social media, I try to have a personal conversation with fans that didn't see the apology, because that's what happens on social media all the time. You get the negative, and then people run wild with the negative, and then when the apology happens or when the positive happens, that doesn't get the same publicity as the hateful stuff does. The hateful, just like a car crash is more entertaining on the public news than a puppy getting adopted. You know what I mean? So it's been tough, because I know I said some really, the few tweets that I put out there were ugly. But I certainly don't think that I should have been banned from my community and banned from the people that have supported my work for 20 plus years now and shown so much love to a character that I put my heart and soul into, to help Star Trek and to help Star Trek spread the message of empathy and understanding and forgiveness and allowing people to grow. And the last thing I want to say, just to kind of wrap this spiel up, is if we don't allow people on social media to have opinions that are against the norm, or that are stupid, or that are ignorant, And if we don't allow people to learn from the things that they say and then apologize and grow, if we don't allow that and we just cancel people with this cancel culture thing and we just write these people off, a lot of them are never going to have a chance to learn or evolve. They're just going to stay bitter and angry. And so I think it's really important when a celebrity or anybody, a musician or anybody on social media says something that they later regret, when they go to apologize, I think 9 times out of 10, it's not for any other reason than they're sincere. And I'd like people to, in the future of social media, think about that and don't be so quick to judge from behind your keyboard so harshly. Something happened today that I thought was very strange. Like, for instance, on Twitter today, I posted about those doctors in Bakersfield that were coming out about they wanted to open up America faster. Do you remember? Have you seen this?
Yeah.
And it was taken down off of YouTube, and I don't necessarily agree with these doctors and what they were saying, but I think it was gross injustice that their video was banned and taken off social media. And I wrote something like that, and then there was a guy that jumped straight to, not only should these doctors have their video banned for all time and never be heard, but they should also have their licenses taken away to practice medicine, and et cetera, straight to punishment and like grill these guys. And for me, my idea of the internet and of America is that we should all have a place to say our opinions, no matter how dumb they are, and we should all have a chance to hear from as many people as possible, and those opinions shouldn't be censored in any way, shape, or form. As far as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, these social media platforms are something that almost 100% of us use. And when an entire society uses something as a way to express their opinions, I think that should trump that these are private corporations that have the ability to censor anybody they want. I think when you become that big of a service that people talk on, they shouldn't allow censorship of any kind. But that's my personal opinion.
No, well said, and especially about the fact that we need to learn how to forgive people that apologize. I mean, it's so well said, and I think in the world of the internet, we're so quick to judge, and so many people anonymous behind the keyboard just think they don't understand the power they wield when they rally enough people over, to take someone out. And so it is scary. And YouTube and a lot of these places, they are censoring and they're demonetizing and they're pushing down creators and pushing things in different directions. It's all very scary. But staying on the path of this, what happened to you, because I'm appreciative of you sharing your story. There's a lot there I sort of want to still talk about with you, because what I find really fascinating about it, and we were talking a little bit before taping, is like, when that first happened too, like, I had my own reservations. I was like, what are we doing? Like, do I really know everything? I feel like, especially in the early days of this movement, we were so quick to judge that we were just, burning people at the stake before we knew more information. And so, with Kevin Spacey, I didn't really even understand, or I myself hadn't really done anything. I think, the lesson learned now, we all learn, is maybe we shouldn't go on Twitter immediately to say our piece until we do more homework, because I agree with you. As I've learned more about Kevin Spacey, I can't defend the guy. He has his right to defend himself still, as everyone does. But there's definitely a lot of questionable stuff about him. And particularly, obviously, the fact that Anthony was young. And I know you've come forward and said that wasn't cool.
Yeah. And the 30 something other allegations, or 40, however many it is now. And the fact that he went to Epstein's Island, I mean, he's on those manifests, and I basically believe anybody that went to that island
was not doing it for good things. Yeah, no, that's disturbing to hear. I didn't even know that. But I think what's interesting about that is, like, yeah, some of the things you said. But part of me is like, well, I think that happens a lot in these cases. Not taking Kevin Spacey away of it, but there's still a little bit of this, like, well, why didn't you leave, or why didn't you do these things? And I think we should have those conversations, as hard as sometimes they are, so we can learn, or so some of us can know, well, why it's not okay. You know what I mean? If we can't have open dialogue with people online, especially through complicated topics, I feel like a lot of people are just going to be ignorant or stubborn or not understand, or people will be wrongfully accused. Due process does go both ways, and people are allowed to process and take in information as they see fit. So, while I know you've
even worse, people with the unpopular opinion won't voice their opinion online. They'll keep it to themselves, and they'll keep it hidden, and then you get this kind of gross KKK effect of like, we won't say it out loud, but we'll do it behind closed doors. The unpopular opinions need to be voiced and need to be heard, and every once in a while an unpopular opinion turns out to be correct. Not in my case, but they need to be heard, and then especially, like you said, when people figure out they're wrong and have the courage to come up and say it, because it's a fact. And PR people in Hollywood always tell you public apologies don't work. It's just a fact, and I hate that we need to change that, because they should. Especially when they're sincere, and there's no way of really knowing when a public apology is sincere. But I would like to give human beings the benefit of the doubt, and think that they're not just doing it for the sake of being fake and saving their own ass.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary.
And even when they're doing that, that's something to be said, because it's somebody that's at least admitting they're wrong.
Yeah, no, true. But I was going to say, it's scary too, because it's like someone like Kevin Spacey coming out with those Frank Underwood videos as sort of his reply to like try and get us, like, we don't know the truth, and playing as weird. It was such a bad choice. But then it just shows me, like, he doesn't understand. Like, we can't accept that yet. I do think we have to take accountability for our actions and show remorse before we come forward and get that forgiveness. And I think that's where it is a little bit complicated. Certain people try to apologize just quickly to get it over with and move forward, and don't actually, I feel like, either learn or so I agree with you wholeheartedly, but I do see the complicated nature of that. I think what's just scary to me is this jumping to conclusions about people and writing them off to such a degree that sometimes people they're unable to work again. They're unable to get out of bed. That some of them push into suicide. There have been a couple. It's scary what happens now with this culture that I do think, thankfully, is slowing down. People are starting to wise up to see that we were being too quick to write people off. Thank God.
Until you've been canceled, or you've been close to canceled, or you've been really attacked violently over the internet by thousands and thousands of people, you don't. It's something to the effect of like, it's really hard to ask for empathy for something if you've never, like, for the people that have never experienced it, it's like a knife, it's like a dagger, because for instance, like when Picard came out and my character was killed without that, they didn't call me to hire me, they didn't offer me the role, they just killed this character that was a much beloved character. The fan base immediately speculated that it had something to do with the Kevin Spacey tweets from years before. Now, the truth is, I don't know whether that's true or that's untrue, and it's not for me to speculate, because I have no information whether that was the reason they decided not to hire me or not. But now, where was I going? I just lost my train of thought.
I'm happy to jump on that, because I don't agree with you.
Well, I'll certainly say that, like, if the speculation is true, that is repugnant, because Star Trek would, in my mind, is something I've been preaching to people for 20 years, is about empathy, understanding, forgiveness, etc. And Anthony Rapp himself was so kind to me and welcoming me back to the Star Trek family and accepting my apology, that if I had already lost all the income and all the traveling to all these different conventions over a number of years since the tweets, and been blacklisted from those events for the most part. I think I did one in 3 years, and I was doing like 10 or 12 a year. But then it's possible that not only that, but my chance at coming back to a show that I love so much and giving people a look at a character that they loved now grown up may have been taken away because of a couple bad tweets one night. I certainly hope that isn't the case. I go around every day believing that isn't the case, but if it is, that's truly tragic in my opinion.
Well, I mean, I don't want to depress you, but I believe that's what happened. Absolutely. I mean, I know others. Red Letter Media is a channel I watch, and they got on there pretty heavily. Because I want to get to this, and I want to make sure people don't actually know. Let me even step back to rewind a bit. For those that don't know, when Picard came out, the new series on CBS All Access, they brought back Jean-Luc Picard. And when they did that, they brought back Icheb's character because they brought back Jeri Ryan, who plays Seven of Nine. She's the Borg. You might have seen her in the show. They were, they had an important relationship through Voyager. So they brought him back, spoiler alert for the show, for Picard. They brought him back in an opening of a show to literally just violently murder him. And not only was it just, I wouldn't have wanted you to do it as the actor. It was it felt like a just complete throwaway right off to this character that fans love. Beyond the fact,
it was a character that was on the show for 2 seasons. And the relationship between him and Seven of Nine was beautiful. And, I filmed 12 episodes, 11 made the air. But he was a much beloved character. And the way that they killed him was so
gross.
Brutal, violent, gross, and quick. And not only that, but they put me in a red shirt, which I thought was a little strange as well. Just like everybody knows red shirts are just there to die. And I don't know. I was certainly shocked by it because on top of that, for the last year, I had been writing friends behind the scenes of Star Trek Picard, producers that I know and love that are friends of mine that work on the show. And we'd been having a conversation about how to bring Icheb back. And I know there was at least 3 producers and showrunners, not showrunners, but there's like 21 producers over there or something like that. But at least 3 of them I had been talking to about coming back on the show. And I felt like I had a really good chance. And they were letting me think that I had a really good chance of coming back on the show. And I even tell myself to this day, maybe I still do. Maybe Icheb was a clone and or maybe they're going to have Q2 come back and snap his fingers and bring me back because the fans have responded so lovingly to him dying. But yeah, the way in which they killed Icheb, I thought was just very vicious, very cold. And even if they made that choice, just from a storytelling perspective, I don't understand why not call the guy that invented the character, that put his heart and soul into making the character, and give him a chance to say goodbye. They did it for Jonathan Del Arco, who also died, spoiler alert, in Picard, and they gave him a chance to say goodbye to his character, and he had only done 1 episode of his Star Trek series. So I definitely felt like there was something against me, and I felt angry that more hurt that I didn't get at least a phone call saying, "Hey, do you want to say goodbye to your character? We're going to kill him off," because I absolutely would have. And I've gotten letters from fans and messages from fans saying it would have been horrible to see you have played that role because of the way that they just threw you out like a bag of moldy tangerines. But I would have loved to do it. For me, it would have been a chance to say goodbye to something I dearly loved, and a chance to, finish finish the story that I, helped build 20 years ago. And I felt very strange that I didn't get at least a phone call.
Well, it's also strange because it would have pleased the fans who liked you, but then the fans who didn't like you, would have gotten to see you killed. So it feels like it would have solved both.
Double bonus.
Both, problems for both. Look, I do. It feels too odd to not be connected, to be perfectly honest, to me. And I say that with love because I agree. You should have had the choice. If you would have been like, no, I'm not interested, then that's, you're right. And then you could have been frustrated at the character. But to not give you a call to kill off this character, and like you said, the way they do it is just so, it's just so disturbingly just quick and unnecessary. And I just want to say, to go to a good thing, I think it's better that you're not on this show because I am not a fan of this show. I think Picard is we've talked, you haven't really watched the series. The show is immensely un-Star Trek to me. I say as a fan, like I understand there's explosions and they're trying to make it more exciting for a newer audience, but the feel of Gene Roddenberry and this optimism in this world that was supposed to be the future of a positive world, that if you actually watched, Next Generation and Voyager, the lessons of Picard and Janeway, that's not what we're seeing in this new Star Trek world. It's filled with hatred and bigotry and class systems that are just, they didn't even, why didn't they save Romulans? None of it makes any sense to me the more I watch the series, and it just makes me depressed that this new world isn't that. And this example of you, the way they put you out, just really shows it at its darkest way. They literally take a fan favorite character who was on 2 seasons of a show and just keep him in the dark and torture him, pull his eyes out, and then really don't even explain. Like, if you didn't even know, I bet you some people wouldn't even know. Wait, was that it? It's so written off in such a disrespectful way that it really rubbed me as a fan the wrong way. So I if anything, I'm glad they did it, because that way you can at least get this. And I hope people will support you and stand up for you and tell them that was wrong, because it wasn't okay. I mean, have you seen any new Star Trek? Do you see this new vibe? Do you think that was part of maybe what they just don't care anymore? Or maybe there was to try and be positive. Maybe they thought, well, look, we'll just throw this character in, whatever. We didn't like Voyager. It would be disrespectful to get Manu on this because it's such a small little part anyway.
I think there's a number of things. Like that's one thing that could have happened. And so I think we have to be fair to just the systems of Hollywood and the way things are run behind the scenes. And it could have just been the head showrunner decided, look, this is how we want to motivate Seven. This is what makes sense to me. That's that. Maybe he didn't like the Icheb character. Maybe he didn't even know much about it, and someone gave him the idea, hey, why don't we take this character from Voyager that was a recurring on the last 2 seasons, and he was like Seven's protege, so that would really piss her off. And, I've heard that theory. So there really are a number of reasons that this could have happened, and without me being involved, without it being anything to do with the backlash from my tweets 3 years ago. That's absolutely possible. So
I mean, the writer of that episode, that wrote that episode, was a writer on Star Trek Discovery who would have clearly known.
She's wonderful too, and she wrote Icheb so beautifully in her novels.
So it's weird.
It also could have been under pressures from the showrunners or the higher ups to write what she wrote.
You are being a kind person, being very positive about it all. I'm the cynic in this, and it rubs me the wrong way. But I good for you for being the better man in this.
Believe it rubbed me the wrong way too. It hurts to this day. It hurts. I don't like the idea that Icheb said, and I don't like what they did to kill him, and I hope that someday that wrong is righted. But I don't know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the reason they did it was because I tweeted some bad things about Kevin Spacey. I just can't make that leap.
Right. No, that's fair. I mean, they might have, and that might not have been the sole reason. Exactly. So, well, that's fair enough. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Since we're asking for that for all people, we should give them that too. I want to then go to sort of just right now you're still fighting. It seems you say it. I've been there too. Of just sort of every fan you get a chance to sort of explain and say, I'm not this person. It's a chore, right? You have to keep doing it and doing it. What do you think's driving sort of that need, or have you just thought, you know what, let me give up on this, or let me reboot myself, or it doesn't matter about these fans, I can't win them over. What's keeping you at sort of trying to win them over?
To be honest with you, there was a moment there where I went, you know what, let's just go Slim Shady on this thing, and let's just turn into a foul-mouthed, angry, say whatever he wants type of opinionated, and just go all out with the anger that I was feeling. But that wouldn't have been positive, because that's not me. The tough thing is for me, and I think this is also a part of my particular story, is I played this character called Icheb, and Icheb was a beautiful person. He was the epitome of loyalty, of friendship, of honor, of intelligence. He was a genius. He was the kind of person that you would want as a friend through thick and thin, kind, humble, innocent. And I'm a punk rock kid from Northern California that has a sense of humor that's very much in the gutter. And from the very beginning of going to Star Trek conventions, parents and kids would bring their family to meet Icheb. And they would find out that I'm not Icheb. And so that, I think, has been part of the fight, is how do I be who I am? And at the same time, I don't want to put this idea out there that I'm a clean Gene Okerlund and that I'm just this most swell, wonderful, heartfelt, perfect human being. I'm not. I'm a human being. But I think a lot of the LGBT community, a lot of the liberal community, don't know how far like lefty I am. My feet are wet. I think people got this idea that like I was a conservative right-wing prick, and I'm somewhere in the middle of it all. So I just don't like the idea in general of people out there being hateful or feeling feelings of hate. It hurts to hate. It sucks. It doesn't feel good to hate anything, to hate people, to hate anything. And so when people are doing it out of a lack of information, and doing it for the wrong reasons, I feel like because I said some stupid shit, it's my duty to at least inform people how and why that happened, if they're interested enough to take the time to talk to me personally. And so I've been doing that for a number of years, and it's gone from 9 out of 100, 10 out of 100 Trek fans despising me to 1 out of 100 Trek fans despising me. And it's been a long battle, and still is. I don't even like to use the term battle, but it's been a long road to recovery and love. At least if somebody's going to hate me, I want them to hate me for who I am and not for who I'm not. I guess is the easiest way to say it.
I totally relate to that. That's true. When you're written a certain way, you want to make sure that they're at least know you, and not doing it. What is your advice for people as we wrap this up? What's your advice for people who are stuck in that and have said something wrong? Did you want to apologize? Like, did you wrestle with that? Tell me about, because this happens a lot about, what do I say? Do I do this right? What's your sort of advice, having now been through this, to someone who sort of finds himself in a similar situation of having foot and mouth?
I woke up the next morning and looked at the tweets and looked at how much hatred was coming in, and flipped on the TV and started watching news about Kevin Spacey and Googling news about Kevin Spacey. And I immediately saw that there was much more to this story than I had heard through the grapevine. And I immediately wanted to apologize. It was just the right thing to do. And everybody should in life, whether it's on the social media or just in life. If you're wrong and you realize it, you need to cop to it and hope that people forgive. And what I've noticed, it's been a struggle. I don't think that I should have had to have struggled this hard as I have for a few dumb opinions that I tweeted one night. But I was also unaware of cancel culture. I was unaware of a lot of things about the internet because I wasn't a very computer savvy or internet social media personality. I didn't really take that stuff very seriously. In fact, I was part of the generation of people that I always saw the internet and my Twitter and my Facebook and my Instagram as a place where I could be completely unlike myself and say whatever the hell I wanted. It was a place where I could go to escape and just be whatever, not like who I really was. So I think I've said over the years a bunch of pretty horrible stuff online that didn't really relate to who I am inside and to my character as a person, as a human.
Right, and it's the fans' right to not like you for that, and I think that's right. But where it's not right is when they are calling up your job and making petitions to stop you from getting income because they don't agree with what you're saying. That is a very important distinction that I think is where you were wronged.
Yeah, that's actually a thing I wanted to say earlier that I forgot too, is it doesn't take much. This is another weird thing about human beings and society. There were those petitions that I talked about banning me from conventions. Thousands of people didn't sign them. Hundreds of people signed them. I have thousands of fans around the world that loved Icheb and love me, and I love them in return. But it only took a few hundred people signing a petition to ban me from conventions here, there, and everywhere. Because it doesn't take a lot of hate, because people don't want to deal with it. People don't want to deal with drama. Yep. Even one person being dramatic is like, okay, whatever. I don't want to deal with his drama. If that's a dramatic person, we're going to put them over there. They're not going to be a part of the show. So I would just caution people that participate in bashing people for their opinions and et cetera, to be a little bit careful about what you do, because you can cause a lot of pain to somebody that you might not really understand how much you're taking away from somebody. Losing your livelihood over saying you like a Kevin Spacey movie or that you like Kevin Spacey at that particular time, I think was way overkill. And to this day, I don't think I deserved that. I think it should have been as simple as, wow, I'm an idiot. I didn't know all these allegations were out there. I didn't know this and that and the other about everything that Kevin has done. Now that I do, I take back everything I said. Anthony Rapp, great, Manu. Thanks for taking everything back. We love you. Should have been closed, done, wrapped up, and over with. And the fact that it lingered is, I think, it's a sickness in our society that I hope we're getting better. And I think you're right. I think in general we're getting better at forgiving people online, and we're getting out of the cancel culture mentality. It's still very much prevalent, but I think a lot of people are waking up to that some innocent people got caught up in the wash of this thing.
I wanted to ask the hugging the cactus moment. For me, the hugging the cactus is embracing that sort of that painful moment where you realize, oh, what did I do? In your instance, you clearly have admitted to some wrongdoing, but what was that sort of dark point? And when did you have any self-reflection in that moment that you're willing to share, just for sort of people to understand that moment of how hard that is, of when you're in that darkest point, you think, is my career now over because I made tweets? When that happened to me, I looked in the mirror a lot more closely to sort of try and make sure I adjusted things. What did you have that moment at all, and did you learn anything from it?
I called a lot of close friends and family members, in tears from all the pain that I was feeling and the freak out that I was having, that like people hated me so much over this that maybe my career was over. Maybe people at CBS were like, I was blacklisted from ever working for them again. I don't know, I just called a lot of friends and family, and then there was one, I can't remember the specific moment, but it's dawned on me after trying to show people love and trying to have intelligent conversations with people and let them know a little bit more information than they may have had through things they've seen online, that you can't win them all over. There's always going to be somebody that hates you. And especially the more famous you get, the more haters there's going to be. And at some point, there's a balance between the people that you can win over that are open-minded people and open to dialogue and getting to know somebody through chatting. And there are people that have just made up their mind and they're always going to hate. Not everybody has to love me. And what's more important to me than people loving me is me being who I am and being real online and not backing away from saying the things I want to say because I'm scared that it might hurt my career. And so I think I'm still working on it, but I think I've gotten a lot better at being myself, but not, just firing off and saying stupid shit without looking into it first.
Yeah. Well, and then echoing that, because I relate, there's a phase, at least I'm still hurt. There's still moments I'm still trying to get through of the fact that people still think I'm terrible things about myself. I'm sure you can relate to sort of still that pain and growth you're going through. But there is still that phase of not giving a shit where you sort of realize, what do I got to lose now? Like there's almost an invincibility to it of like, well, I was canceled in a way, so now I'm reborn. It's going to be harder to do it again. Have you felt that? Do you feel have you leaned into that at all yet? Are you not there yet?
Well, I'm pretty sure that my Star Trek career is over, and what I've done is I've decided that I'm just going to let that go. And if Star Trek and the people that love me over there and the friends that I have behind the scenes over there decide to hire me for another role or something like that happens, I'll be wonderfully surprised and I'll dance the jig and be thrilled. Otherwise, I'm just letting it go. And the last 20 years, I've worked in different movies and different television shows and produced movies of my own, and that's what I'm going to focus on doing. And if the Trekkers decide to bring me back into the fold, then that would be beautiful. And if they don't, I'm okay with it. That's what you have to do. You just have to realize that, like, I've fought as hard as I can fight. I'll continue to tell people the truth of the story if people are interested. But I'm not going to spend my day wallowing in self-pity for what I think was an overreaction by the fan community.
Yeah, well, and a lot of people you've worked with are over on the Orville, and some would say they're doing better sci-fi TV right now anyway. Maybe
the Orville's wonderful.
Hopefully, maybe they can give you a call, right?
I talked to Brandon on the phone during, I think 2 days or maybe even a day after Icheb was killed. And I called him and I was almost in tears. And I was like, hey, Brandon, if you don't know Brandon Braga.
Yeah, I know. He was on Screen Junkies. He was great. Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of the head producers over at the Orville. and he did the Cosmos, and brilliant writer, funny guy, cool guy. But I called him after like not speaking to him for 10, 12 years because I went, you know what? They just killed me, and my legacy. I felt like my legacy was like ripped from me, and I just had to call him, and I was like, Brandon, I don't know if you know this, but they just killed Icheb in Star Trek, and I realized that I never took the time to say thank you to you for this beautiful 20-year experience I had on this show playing this character, and now that it's gone, I just wanted to call you and say, like, you know, it hurts. But at the same time, thank you for all of it, because it was a beautiful experience. And he was like, oh man, I'm sorry you hurt. You know what? There's so many things going on behind the scenes. You don't know what happened over there. You're never going to know what happened over there. And I'd love to work with you again down the road. So maybe we can get you over here somehow. So who knows? I might end up on the Orville. You never know in Hollywood. Sometimes the role that you think you really wanted that you didn't get, or the character that they killed off, leads to something much better.
Mm-hmm.
And you're never going to know those things until they just happen. So I just keep soldiering forth and putting your, you know, you said advice to people that have run into the social media troubles. Just keep putting your best foot forward and being who you are. And if people are going to hate you, I've said it earlier in the interview, but let them hate you for who you are, and don't try to change yourself too much for them unless it's something you want to change about yourself.
I want to thank Manu for sharing his story. You can reach out to him on social media, as well as catch many of the other films he's worked on over on IMDb. Please go show him some support. If you like these interviews and you feel like these are important issues, please share and support this channel. It's our goal of this channel to tell stories of people who deserve to be heard. And sometimes due to the subject matter of the interview, YouTube sometimes throttles this channel and doesn't get them out as widely as they should. So please help by sharing these stories on social media and by subscribing to this YouTube channel. Also, make sure to hit that notification bell to get all alerts. And if you'd really like to support this channel, you can support the Hugging the Cactus Patreon. If you know any other stories that deserve to be shared, please follow me, Andy Signor, on social media. You can also find us in all places you hear podcasts. And you can learn more anytime at uncancelled.com. Thanks so much for watching.